everybody, and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am your host for today, Taylor Rockwell. Daryl Grove is not with me in studio. It is a chemotherapy day for Daryl, so he is going to be gone for a couple days. He should be back Saturday evening for us to review the USMNT's matchup against Trinidad and Tobago in the Gold Cup group stage, their second match, which is obviously the revenge match for 2017. Totally makes up for not going to the World Cup if we beat Trinidad and Tobago in the Gold Cup. So Daryl will be reviewing that with me. We'll be reviewing it together, as we are wont to do. But Daryl not being here means it's also slightly difficult to talk about the Women's World Cup games that have happened today, including the USA's victory over Sweden, their 2-0 win, which means they advanced to the knockout round against Spain. Caitlin Murray should be with me tomorrow to help break down that game. We wanted to have her on tonight, but there's a 6-hour time difference, and she's on a deadline. It makes kind of finding the time really difficult unless it's like after 3 a.m., which would be asking a bit much from Caitlin. So I do apologize for not having any coverage of the women's national team on today's show. Again, that should be on tomorrow. But for now, we're going to be talking to American Soccer Now's Brian Sciaretta. Brian has been on the show before, been on the show several times, but is here to discuss a little bit about the USA's result against Guyana, the 4-0 win, what we should take away from that, but also a kind of more in-depth look at Tyler Boyd, since Brian has kind of been tracking him for a good long while now. We then look ahead to what Brian would like to see against Trinidad, and then I kind of quiz Brian, get his thoughts on some of the players in Europe who we think could get a move or could use a move. Young players like, say, the aforementioned Tyler Boyd, but also Emmanuel Sabi, Chris Gloucester, and even some more veteran players like, say, Bobby Wood. He could definitely use a move. So lots of good chat in there with Brian. That's coming up right now. Tomorrow should be our USA Sweden review with Caitlin Murray, who is in France covering the team, has all that knowledge. But for now, we'll turn it over to Brian's knowledge about the men's national team. With me now, I've got American Soccer Now's Brian Sciaretta. Brian, thank you very much for making your return to the Total Soccer Show.
Oh, anytime. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, so we've got a lot going on. We've got the Women's World Cup, obviously, but for the purposes of today's show, we're going to be looking at the Gold Cup specifically, and maybe then some like Americans abroad, things like that. But that's where I wanted to start, was with the Gold Cup, because as you wrote in your match recap on the 4-0 win, Guyana is a pretty weak team. We shouldn't read maybe too much into that result. So I first want to ask you, I guess, more so about the performance itself. I'm assuming you were kind of in the same boat as me and Daryl and lots of other people, where you weren't like going to get overwhelmed by whatever happened in the Guyana game, but you also wanted to see something that kind of gave you confidence going forward. So what did you make of the overall performance?
Yeah, it is tough to read. You're not going to know what they got from this game until they play the next game, unfortunately. I mean, if they come out and it's a matter of them just playing to the sum of their parts. They don't even have to be excellent right now. They just, to be able to reverse the trend of those really ugly friendlies before the Gold Cup, they need some kind of confidence. I mean, if they just play an average game like they should on paper, not even excel, but just however these players, just deliver average performances, they should win games like, Jamaica and stuff. But, they didn't do that, and it looked like something was seriously wrong. So the best they could do is hopefully get confidence that they can do that. And, you don't know if they got that confidence until they, play better teams, unfortunately. So obviously it didn't hurt. That's the short answer. But, in terms of if there's anything positive, but if they come out and play really well from here on in, then you could say, wow, well, maybe the Guyana game, gave them a little bit of momentum.
Mm-hmm. I would say one player who definitely had a strong showing, is probably feeling fairly confident, would be Tyler Boyd. I want to talk about his performance, but first I want to ask you about how we got to this point with Tyler Boyd. When did you first become aware of him as a player, maybe his eligibility for the U.S. national team? And do you think, to the best of your knowledge, was it before or after the U.S. Soccer Federation became aware of him?
Yeah, I don't like to speculate on when, I find out about things before, or my reporting gets players on teams. Like, people have been tweeting at me like that. Like, that's really a question for U.S. Soccer. Because in all fairness, they've found some guys that I never even, some really good players that I never even knew were American eligible, but U.S. Soccer was working behind the scenes the whole time to get them on board, and also to help sometimes with them getting a passport. Cameron Carter-Vickers is one. I didn't know about him until he appeared on a US U18 roster. And it turns out they were working for a year to help him get his passport and get him into camp. And it turned out to be really good. So, it's not like they don't do their homework, but sometimes, you wonder. I was interviewing. I became aware of him. I've known about him being an American for quite some time, but I had a tough time really rating him as a player until he did a couple things for Vitória Guimarães, and then he went on loan to Tondela in Portugal's top flight, and I started to really, say he started scoring some really, really good goals. I reached out to him, his rep, for an interview, and at the point he wasn't doing any interviews that touched about his eligibility, because I think he just said, I wanted to focus on my club career. That kind of made me thinking, he wanted to play for the U.S., but he didn't want to close the door on New Zealand or get anyone too upset. He just wanted to plug away. Then he started scoring some wonder goals for them towards the end of about April of 2018. And they were saying, be patient with the interview. He was saying, be patient with the interview. When the time's right, we'll do it. And then I guess really in December, his reps actually reached out to me and wanted to do an interview discussing his eligibility, and I was excited about it. And but this time he was still not on loan in Turkey. But I did the interview. He just won an award as for Vitória Guimarães as best newcomer for a breakout player for his loan that he had. And then obviously it turned out to be really good timing because he went to Turkey from Portugal and started just tearing it up. And then things started to move, happen really fast for him. But that was the only time he spoke on that issue until he started to switch. And then he did next time we were able to speak again.
All right. Well,
and what he's doing is great. I mean, he's building off of his great success that he had in Turkey. He arrived in camp confident. Very, he's so skilled on the ball with either foot. Not many players you find are that two-footed. And he's so fast. He brings he addresses a lot of weaknesses, and his kind of game can really help the U.S. team because he really stretches defenses and opens the door for other players. So you're going to see if he's on his game, you'll start to see other players like Paul Ariel and Christian Pulisic, and those kinds of players who are good on 1-on-1v1 and guys who like to run at players. You'll start to see those guys have more space to operate because their other guys are drifted further apart trying to contain Tyler. And I think we saw a little bit of that because I found Paul Ariola played very well against Guyana too.
You may have already answered this, but I wanted to ask, given what you've seen from him, at least at club level so far, was that about the standard we should expect from Tyler Boyd when he's playing for the national team? Or do you think maybe it was a good or decent performance, but very much helped by a fairly weak opponent?
I mean, it was helped by a weak opponent. There's no doubt about it. But, I mean, he was scoring against and doing some really good things in Turkey. Not just against the bottom feeders of that league, but against teams towards the top, top 5 teams in Turkey. He was just lighting up when he was on his game. So I mean, I think it's a matter of getting him the ball, and it's a matter of other. But his team wasn't really good in Turkey too, so which leads you to believe, for him to be really good, he can play against teams where. Opponents where his team doesn't necessarily have players that are superior to the other team. So that's good. I think, he's capable of doing some very good things against some really good teams. But, of course, with him, he's kind of a late bloomer. And, you've only seen a half season of really, really high level of play. And so maybe it's not long enough to determine whether it's been this is how he is, or he just had a really good second half of the season. But everything's trending in a really positive direction for him.
I do want to talk more about other players, but I'm going to stick with Tyler Boyd one more time because as you mentioned, Ankara Gücü, his Turkish club, not necessarily like the wealthiest of teams, not like in that kind of like upper echelon of Turkish clubs, as you pointed out. When I studied abroad in Ankara, they used my university's soccer field as like their training facility on occasion, which maybe shows you, compare that with Galatasaray, Fenerbahce, Beşiktaş, who all have state-of-the-art facilities and then state-of-the-art stadiums as well. So there have been links that maybe he ends up at one of those bigger Turkish clubs. If you had to guess, do you think he ends up playing back in Portugal next season, or do you think maybe his future is maybe closer to Istanbul?
I mean, I think anything's possible at the moment. But I think, he impressed so many eyes in Turkey that, they're going to be the clubs most attracted to him, and wanting to sign him. I think that the reports, what I understand, the report that Fenerbahce have put in a pretty substantial bid for him, I believe that to be legitimate and believable. But whether or not someone else comes in, or if other teams are able to come in as well over him, over Fenerbahce, that remains to be seen. I think Victoria Guimaraes would probably be willing to sell, but it's a question of whether or not, because his contract's only for another year, so they pretty much have to sell him now, or else they're going to lose him for free if he doesn't resign. So that can't happen. So it looks like he'll be on the move, and it's going to come down to who's willing to come in for the biggest bids. I don't know of any other European leagues outside of Turkey that are interested in at the moment. I mean, not to say that it's not happening. I just don't know about it. But that could be like the curveball in the whole equation. But I mean, I think there's some really good, impressive offers coming in for him within Turkey, and you have to say that they're the favorites at the moment, but not a done deal.
All right. Well, we'll get back to maybe some other players who might be on the move this summer, or who, getting your opinion on whether or not you think they will be or you think they should be. But turning to the U.S. Men's national team again for a moment, were there any other players against Guyana that you thought stood out either in a particularly positive way or a particularly negative way?
I mean, no one really, dropped the ball negatively. I think some people didn't elevate their games as much as they could have. Some people just, they might have played down to the level of their opponent, not entirely, but a little bit. I think Paul Arriola played well. He's the kind of guy, I think, when he gets a little bit of space. And I always like Paul Arriola as a player. I mean, because he does a lot of things that, that don't get recognized. He plays a lot of gritty defense. He can, when Berhalter wants a disruptive team that can force turnovers and win balls, he does those little things, and he's not fast, but he's pretty quick. And I think he could, he's the guy who stands a lot to benefit with having another winger who's really good and explosive. So I think Paul Arriola played well. I think Walker Zimmerman did really well too. Not necessarily defensively, because they're not really challenged much defensively against Guyana, but I liked his passing out of the back. I thought that was pretty accurate. He was able to get forward and play the ball forward into dangerous areas out of the back line, particularly in the second half. And, the rest is just guys you just want to, withhold judgment for against, stronger competition. But, Arriola and Zimmerman, I think, are guys that should have left the performance with their heads held high.
And then, as Twitter is wont to do, there was obviously some criticism of the national team, like a few key players standing out. Jesse Zardes, Michael Bradley, Will Trapp, I would say, even got some negativity. Of those three, or maybe of any other players that you think tend to get negative attention, who do you think is the most important to this national team right now?
I think, it's, what do you say, Zardes, Bradley, and Trapp?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I still think it depends on what, if all these guys are asked, for certain roles, if they can live up to the role, or if they're given something that's not their strength to do, it becomes a little tough on them. I think Michael Bradley's still the best. I mean, he had a really nice assist in that game where he was able to drop the ball really on a dime. I think he could pass well. And he probably plays a little bit better defense. I know he plays better defense than Will Trapp, which there's a guy who, like, you can criticize him, but, like, he shouldn't be expected to be like that destroyer number 6. And when teams kind of, are able to move through the middle of the field when he's on there, that's on the coach, not the player, because, like, Will Trapp is not that great of a defender. He should be in there when if you're asking someone to come in and break the game open with long passing and a big passing range, because that's what the game requires, Will's going to do really well. But, Bradley probably has a little bit more multi-dimension, more dimensions to his game. And Zardes, I don't think is a starter when Josie's healthy. But, Bradley probably is at this moment, all depending on whether or not Tyler Adams gets back into the center of the midfield. But, I think that, Bradley still has a lot of the big game experience there. It wasn't good in 2017, but, he had a lot of big game experience before then. So, at least in the short term, he's not aged out of the team yet. I still think he's capable of doing some good things.
When the roster was announced, there was obviously some consternation about Gyasi Zardes being included, Josh Sargent being excluded from the Gold Cup at least. Where were you on that sort of like debate, or where are you in terms of do you think it should be Josh Sargent? Do you think he's ready to go, or do you think it probably will continue to be Gyasi Zardes for the time being? Obviously for the Gold Cup it will be, but I guess I'm wondering, when that announcement was made, what were your feelings on it?
Well, I thought we were talking about, like, the backup forward. It's like, I mean, you can't get too worked up about backups, and on top of it too, like, the day the U.S. national team is going to be in a better standing, at least amongst its fans, is going to be when, like, they don't have to rely on teenagers who rarely play for their clubs, and then you have to kind of make like a judgment call shooting from the hip, in terms of how these players are and whether or not they're good enough to handle the international game. Because I mean, Josh, ever since the Bundesliga resumed from the winter break, I don't think he played 150 minutes with Werder Bremen, and what made it not really good for him is, like, he wasn't even playing with the reserve team. Or he was playing very little with, like, their U19 or reserve team, because he was so busy with, he's sitting on the bench for the first team. So, he wasn't really playing at all. And when games are coming in quick succession, like they are in tournaments, it becomes even more of a test on endurance, and not playing and having to go into a tournament type atmosphere is always a little bit more tough, to deal with. I mean, I think Josh is really, really good, and I think he will be a starter for this national team. And I'm not as down on Gyasi Zardes as everybody is. Like, I mean, I see the bad first touches and everything like that too, but he can get himself in a dangerous position and do some things. I mean, if you watch the Copa America in 2016, pretty much won the Paraguay game with that play to assist Dempsey. It was a great play. So you can do good things. It's just, you wish there were people better, but you also wish that the people who knock guys out are going to be guys who are going to be playing regularly. So it's not such a debated thing, and it really sets the fans back when, like, we have to make these kind of judgment calls. And U.S. Soccer's been doing it too much over the past several years, is relying on these kind of players. It's I like it when the time comes, and then they're regularly starting, then there's no debate about it. But Josh wasn't in the best situation either. He's got a lot of natural talent, but I'm skeptical whether it would have been able to fit into a tournament-like atmosphere.
Hey folks, much more still to come from my conversation with Brian Sciaretta, but first I wanted to take a moment to talk about today's sponsor, and to do that, I wanted to talk to my friend Daryl Grove. Hello, Daryl.
Hello. Do I have to do this?
You do. You're here. I brought you in on your off day. I tore you away from chemotherapy to be here to do some ad reads with me.
The nurses were very upset.
They were confused. I actually drove into the building with my car. It's a whole thing. You can probably see it on the news. And Daryl's here now, so thanks for making that sacrifice, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm here till the police come and get you.
You are, because today's sponsor is a new one. Hopefully they don't come too soon.
Yeah.
It's a new one, but it's one, I'm going to be totally honest, it makes me slightly uncomfortable to talk about, which is why I'm happy my buddy's here to talk to me about it, with it. It's Manscaped. Manscaped, the #1 men's below-the-belt grooming, who offer precision-engineered tools for your family jewels.
Yeah, so I think what we're going with here is it's a good product.
It is.
It's an uncomfortable subject.
It's an uncomfortable subject, yes. Because basically...
It could be an uncomfortable area if you do it wrong.
This is very true,
I guess Manscaped is meant to guarantee that you don't do it wrong.
There it is. Yes, they've basically redesigned the electric trimmer, their lawnmower 2.0, their 2.0.
I like the name.
Upgrade.
Yeah.
Has proprietary skin-safe technology, so it is streamlined and won't get caught or tangled or snagged or anything like that.
Yes, that's. I'm already uncomfortable.
Me too.
Even imagining it.
Yes, and then they also have additional products which I enjoy, like the Crop Preserver, which is anti-chafing. It's deodorizer, moisturizer.
For down there?
Which I think this is where... I talked to my wife about this, because when we found out Manscaped was going to be an advertiser, I was sort of like, yeah, I don't know, like it's not really a product that's like necessarily like up my alley. And she was like, yeah, but like it's great, like because men don't talk about this stuff. It's not really a thing that like is ever really openly discussed.
Yeah.
Women talk about it, men don't. Men should talk about it.
Now a company's going to force you to talk about it on an ad.
Indeed. Indeed.
Maybe men will start talking about it in sort of real life as well.
Yeah, I think they should.
We'll break the final barrier.
Yes, we will. And it's an area that you need to take care of for a variety of reasons.
Yeah,
and
you don't want to break any barriers.
You certainly don't. Yeah, and that's why they've got the trimmer. They've got razors that are like specially made to be
razors,
safe
right?
and secure. Exactly.
Yeah. We've looked at this, right? They've sent us the products, and I've taken a look at the razor.
You have. You've taken a look at it. That's as far as you're willing to go right now. Daryl's going to use the razor on air right now. Daryl, let's see how it goes. I've taken you away from chemo and made you even more uncomfortable. But no, they've got cleanser, reviver, preserver, so you can deodorize, moisturize, take care of it down there. Just make it a more pleasant area overall, and that's what we're all going for.
You can also get 20% off and free shipping with the TSS discount code. So the 20% off and free shipping, the code is TSS, which is used at manscaped.com. So you go to manscaped.com, you select a product that you would like, such as the Lawnmower 2.0.
Yep.
Then you enter the code.
Not 1.0.
Not 1.0. Don't get that one. Get the 2.0.
Nuh-uh.
TSS for 20% off. Always use the right tools for the job.
There we are. Thank you very much to Manscaped for sponsoring today's episode. Daryl
I
Grove.
forgot to add, there's a free travel bag as well.
Ooh.
So you get free shipping with the code.
You left off the travel bag?
You get the free travel bag, which we've also taken a look at.
You know what? Go
right?
back to the hospital. If you're going to leave off travel bags...
I want to go back to the hospital.
All right, in a minute, maybe 20 minutes. Because first, we're going to answer a listener question. This one comes from Lewis Kaz Tidrick.
Yes.
What does Lewis Kaz Tidrick ask?
All right, Lewis asks, which 3 US players that haven't made their senior team debut would you call up first for the CONCACAF Nations League games this fall if you were in charge?
All right.
So for people who don't know, CONCACAF Nations League, we are playing Cuba and Canada, home and away both. Those games are in October and November. There's also some September friendlies that we'll play. I'm not sure they're scheduled yet. I'm stalling because I have too many answers to this. And
Do you really?
I don't know who.
All right, well then why don't I go first?
Okay.
And,
so uncapped players, right?
Yes.
So this means Tim Weah, Josh Sargent, even Dwayne Holmes. Those aren't the guys we can
even
call
Jackson Ewell. He's got the one. So Jackson Ewell's out. There you go. Yes. So I'm going to start off controversial. I'm going to say like we should use if I'm going to take this question the way I choose to take it, which is to use it as an opportunity to get people in that I want to see, that I think could fill positions of need, but also maybe take some shots and see what happens. I want to call in Efrain Alvarez. That's one that's on my list right there.
All right.
17 years old, eligible to play for the United States, did once play for the U.S. at youth level, now plays for Mexico at youth level, has been tearing it up for Los Dos, then for the Galaxy has been getting minutes, and I want to see if maybe throw him that senior national team call-up and just say, like, hey, we want you in this team. We want you part of this program and see what happens, because you get a good player in who could potentially be a star performer for the United States down the road, but you also stick it to Mexico a little bit because you take one of their prize jewels.
Is that what you're all about?
Yes.
Yeah. All
Not
right,
family jewels, but prize jewels.
You also have Efrain Alvarez's former teammates,
Yep.
Alex Mendez and Ulysses Llanes.
Yep.
I would argue that right now it's way too early to call them into the senior national team, but it kind of depends what happens at the start of the next Bundesliga season. right? So they're with, Wolfsburg and Freiburg. If by some miracle they're in the first team or getting first team minutes, I'd be thinking about calling those guys up because I've been really impressed by the performances at under 20, but they're not my choices just yet.
All right.
I just sort of felt the opportunity to
Fair
mention
enough.
them. All right, the actual first choice on this list is a centre-back who's been playing magnificently for Atlanta United.
Oh, okay.
His name is Miles Robinson.
All right.
I would get Miles Robinson in there. I think he is
solid shout.
a centre-back that kind of fits the system. He's really smooth on the ball. He's good at breaking the lines. Obviously, also just a good defender. There's a lot of... Remember the Monterrey game? They eventually lost over 2 legs in the CONCACAF Champions League. But Robinson was brilliant at taking sort of one-on-one battles and winning them against Monterrey's attackers.
I really like that shout. I kind of forgot that he had not yet been capped. So
Right? Yeah.
Good point
I think
there.
he's going to be playing maybe some U23s. He's going to be part of the Olympic qualifying cycle because he's in that age range. But I'd love to get him called up and take a look at him for the senior national team in the Nations League. He could handle Cuba.
I think he probably could. We had similar ideas here because I also looked at center backs. There are 2 who I had on my list. One is Chris Richards, who obviously did very well at this past U20 World Cup, but has not yet played for Bayern Munich, obviously, but has also not really necessarily even settled in with them yet. He moved there in, I think, officially January of last year. So
played a bunch of U19 games.
Or this year, I guess. Yes, exactly. So I want to see him get some more minutes. I also maybe want to move away a little bit, aside from Efrain Alvarez, where we're sticking it to a CONCACAF rival. I want to move away from just giving call-ups to exciting players to see what they can do.
Especially if they haven't played any senior football yet.
But I really like Chris Richards, and I'm really excited for him to be part of the national team one day.
So you calling him up or just giving him a shout?
I'm just saying, hey, you're doing great. Keep it going. But instead,
send us some Cheez-Its.
The center back I'm going for, The center back I'm going for is Austin Trusty, who has never been capped at senior level. 20-year-old center back for the Philadelphia Union, has been playing consistent professional minutes since, I believe, 2016, and has become a very reliable performer for the Philadelphia Union. Some of those minutes were with Bethlehem Steel.
Okay.
But for the Philadelphia Union, he is an anchor in that back line. He organizes. He helps younger center backs like Mark McKenzie if the situation requires, and I think he could be a very exciting prospect for the U.S. as a centre back.
You know what's going to happen? Both our choices, Robinson and Trusty, they'll probably be the starting centre backs for the U23s in Olympic qualifying.
And we'll high five.
And they won't be available in the fall.
And then I'll be sad.
Yeah.
Much in the same way that I broke you out of the hospital, I'll go break them out too.
Are you going to break me back in afterwards, by the way?
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
All right. I would call up...
It depends on if the police show up before then.
This one's not serious, but it's kind of serious. I would call up Stefan Fry. Because then finally Seattle fans would stop tweeting at us saying, why isn't Stefan Fry in the US national team?
And our friend Kale would lose her mind as well.
Yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't really call him Stefan Fry. But he is uncapped.
Forgot about that.
Paxton Pomykal.
Yep.
Paxton Pomykal, I think, is kind of ready for that next step. We saw him lights out at the U20. Lights out in Major League Soccer. A bunch of players who, Roldan, Leggett when he played, there were Georgi Mihailovic. A lot of guys are in the senior national team based on their performances in Major League Soccer. Paxton Pomykal deserves that honour as well. I would even argue that maybe if he hadn't been so key to the U20s in May, he might have been able to get a look or be on the fringes of the national team already.
All right. I think I disagree, though.
Okay, why's that?
I don't really. He's my third player. Yeah. I have Paxton Pomykal for the exact reasons you mentioned. And also because I think in looking at the United States, what we've seen from them recently and so far in the Gold Cup, we're recording this Wednesday evening, I feel like he could be a player who comes in, obviously is young on the younger side, on the smaller side right now, but I think could come in, battle, show that fight, show that determination, and kind of just bring back a little bit of that, tenacity to the national team that maybe we've been missing a little bit.
The spot I would play him is the Weston McKennie, right. So it's right attacking mid, number 10. But when we've dropped back into the 4-4-2, he's one of the two midfielders. The backup for that right now is Christian Roldan, and I think we talked about on the last show that we've not been impressed with Roldan's performances. I think Pomykal brings something a little bit extra on both sides of the ball. I think he'd be an upgrade right now on Christian Roldan, with all due respect.
I mean, we talked about it on a review show, so I will not disagree. But I will say that those were kind of my 4 that I had, including Chris Richards. Okay. So I turn it back over to you for you to finish it out.
I'm not fully confident in this because he's never played top flight football just yet, but Sergino Dest is the guy that I'd be really interested in seeing play for the senior national team, just to see how well he does.
Before I decided with Efrain Alvarez, it was a toss-up for me between Dest and Gloucester.
Yeah, so Sergino Dest has played in the second tier in the Netherlands for young Ajax in the Eredivisie. By October, he might have been getting nibbles at first team minutes. Even if he hasn't, I think he still played... It's not a great standard in the second tier of Dutch football, as I understand it, but he still played professional minutes, and there's definitely something there, and he's a dual national. Right. So he is one that if you get in for the CONCACAF... I assume this is part of the reason Lewis asked is, if you're in for the CONCACAF Nations League, you're cap-tied, because it's an official competition, right? There's no switching after this, right? So Sergino Dest getting... 12 20 minutes at right back in the CONCACAF Nations League against Cuba, then he's American for life.
All right.
He can't go and play for the Dutch.
American for life. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I guess then, since you've done that one, I will add, I'll throw in Chris Gloucester just to say that one of the knocks against him going into the tournament was that into the U20 World Cup, is that he wasn't as aggressive of an attacker. He wasn't as good going forward, as that left back in the left channel.
That criticism disappeared in the tournament, right?
It did, but I would also say that left back for the U.S. national team right now is not necessarily a position that does need to go bombing forward.
Yeah.
More so that's the right back spot. I would also have concerns about Dest. Is he a right back? Is he a center midfielder? Is he attacking wide? Is he staying back? What does Berhalter want to do? I don't want it to look bad for him.
He can do all the Nick Lehmann things.
It's true.
He really, really can. I think it'd be really exciting to see him in there.
That's not a knock against him. I would just be sad if he came in and was like, wait, what am I doing now? Where am I going? So Chris Gloucester, I feel like, could be just kind of the stay-at-home left back, but obviously can attack if the situation necessitates.
Now I've landed on this cap tie thing. Is there anyone else we need to cap tie?
I don't know.
We should ask Brian Sciaretta. Maybe he can find another Tyler Boyd out there.
Well, yeah, probably. I feel like he's already on it, so that's good of him. I would also note...
He should be answering this question.
Yeah, he should be. And maybe I'll ask him. I might ask him now. Because we're recording this before I've talked to him. So, yeah, probably. Yeah. I would add, though, here's a big disclaimer, is that you and I, because we are focused on the end of the European season, then we've been focused on the summer tournaments, I would be honest and say that you and I have not paid as much attention to Major League Soccer as we maybe have in seasons past at this point. We plan to kind of change that once we get a little bit more free time. But I do wonder if there are players, because we've gone young players primarily in this one, Stefan Fry being the obvious exception. I do wonder if there are some players out there who are 24, 25, 26 who maybe haven't gotten looks, maybe did fall through the cracks a little bit and have shown themselves to be capable performers this season. So I welcome that feedback, but these are the ones that I feel most comfortable speaking honestly about.
Do we welcome some tweets?
Yeah.
There's a lot of negative tweets after the USA's 4-0 win over Guyana. Maybe some positive tweets shouting out players that you think maybe deserve a call-up in September, October, November for the US national team.
I would enjoy that immensely.
They don't necessarily have to play for the team you support, because then we always look at that with a slightly because then obviously it's your hometown.
I mean, they can, but when it becomes
that can't be the reason
they're
why.
Clearly the best left back in the entire world because they play for my team, that's when maybe I don't agree so much.
I'm not arguing that Connor Cody should be the starting centre back for England. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, he should be 100%. Lock it down.
Wolves fans who really think that.
Really?
Yeah, in a 4-4-2, even though he plays in a back three. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Your people.
It's a whole thing.
Your people
you haven't
smart.
been on Wolves Reddit and Wolves Twitter, have you? It's a whole thing.
Shock of all shocks, I have not. I've just been busy hate staring at the Man United Reddit page. We can talk about that later on. We can talk about the transfer window later on, but right now we should talk about today's sponsor.
Yes,
Grip 6 Belts.
Grip 6 Belts. Well, I don't know how long they've been sponsoring, but I feel like it's a long time. They're an established Total Soccer Show sponsor.
They I believe, I can't remember if it was a tweet or an email. They tweeted or emailed us to chastise me for only having one belt, because on the last read I was talking about how I lost mine and thus my pants were consistently almost falling down because I refused to abandon the Grip 6 belt even though I didn't know where it was. They were noting that they do have more for sale. And I could maybe take advantage of that if I so chose.
Well, what type of belts do they have for sale at the Grip6.com website?
The Grip 6 ones.
The
ones that don't have holes, no flaps.
Yeah.
It's basically the lightweight belt that are you allergic to nickel? Is that what it is?
I am.
See, these are the things. I stole your chart as well from the hospital, so I know that. That was attached to the bed when I wheeled you out. So I know that, and I know that you don't have to worry about that because you've got the lightweight belts, and then you've got the webbing that attaches to it, so that basically it bites down like badger teeth and never lets go.
Yeah, I think we've overcomplicated when we've described this in the past, right? But essentially, the webbing, which is the belt, slides through the designed buckle and just it grips on. That's why it's called Grip 6, because that thing grips and does not let go. I have another question. Do you take my insurance?
I mean, what do you mean?
If you're looking at my chart, you're not going to charge me, are you?
I mean, I literally took your insurance card, yes. That's what happens when you take the pants off with the Grip 6 belt attached. Everything falls apart because now I have access to everything. If it was still belted to you, this wouldn't be an option.
There are also a selection of buckles. I've gone with the plain one because it's kind of my style, right? It's no big logos. I like it nice and plain. But you can also get the American flag on there. You can get a salmon on there. You can get a bear on there.
What about if you're like a big fan of TSS?
You could get the Total Soccer Show logo lasered onto a Grip 6 buckle. It's not an easy option on the website. You have to sort of request it. If you request it, they will make it happen. We can send them the logo. I've got one. I actually gave one to my dad. And I've got one for myself as well with the TSS logo on it.
I forgot how to make that happen, which is why I threw to you. But what I do know is that they offer a comprehensive lifetime guarantee. The guarantee, the 3 A's are anytime, any condition,
anywhere.
reason. But yes, also anywhere. I'm sure they will accept them from anywhere. Yes. But yeah, anytime, any condition, any reason, any dream will do. I don't know what that means. You know what? It's time to get you back to the hospital.
I think it's from the Technicolor Dreamcoat musical, which I've never seen. I don't know why I know that.
Now I feel like you might be medicated. Now I definitely think it's time to get you back to the hospital.
Snaves knows what I'm talking about.
I have every confidence he does. But before we get you back, we should talk about a way that people could maybe get a Grip 6 belt, but not have to pay full price.
So actually things have switched up a little bit. We always direct people to grip6.com/TSS, which is the landing page. If you go there, then you can get 35% off. 35% off, that's more than a third. Any Grip 6, the big packs of like 3 to 6 belts with three webbings.
Yep.
Webbings? Yeah. So you get 35% off.
Webbings is.
You get 35% off if you buy the big bumper pack. Spend more, save more, essentially. If you want to get the classic 20% off just the one belt, 20% off just the one belt, you just check out and use a discount code at checkout, and the checkout code is TSSXX. TSSXX. The Roman numerals for 20XX.
There it is.
TSSXX for 20% off at grip6.com when you check out.
It's all coming together. All right. Yeah. So thank you to Grip 6 for sponsoring today's episode. Thank you to Lewis Kaz-Tidrick for the excellent question. Thank you to Manscaped as well for choosing to begin sponsoring the Total Soccer Show. Hopefully they continue to do so. And thank you to you, Daryl Grove, for allowing me to hijack you from the hospital. Let's get you back there, I suppose.
Yes, please.
You mentioned players who maybe we thought were going to be better, thought were going to be involved in there. And I do agree with you that I think when that roster was announced, I saw it as Sargent and Zardes, probably the backups to Altidore. Okay, fine, I guess it's just going to be Zardes. But I think the thing that confuses, at least me on a fairly continuous basis, is I always had the expectation that Bobby Wood would be the one challenging Josie Altidore for minutes, maybe eventually becoming the starter and Josie becoming the substitute. Mm-hmm. Instead, here we are, Bobby Wood, not even on the roster, in a precarious position at club level. I guess you watch him, I'm assuming, a decent amount or more than I do probably. What do you think?
I don't think anyone's watching Bobby. I mean, that's the problem.
Yeah, well, I guess that's what I wanted to ask is, like, if you had to pinpoint a couple things, like, what has gone wrong for Bobby Wood that he finds himself in this situation?
I mean, he was... a lot of things. I mean, he didn't play well. He put himself into a bad situation where, it was tough for forwards to play well. When you get on those relegated clubs, it's really tough for a player like Bobby, unless he's getting the ball a lot. And when he did get the ball, he didn't play. He didn't do much with it. So he wasn't clinical, which is, sometimes, you can get forwards who score a lot of goals and they get like tons and tons of chances. Like Bobby wasn't in the position to have that kind of a luxury. And, he's better than his numbers lead on, but like his numbers are just pretty bad. And look, when you go to a relegated club that's going to be battling for relegation, like, that's kind of the duty and that comes with the territory of being a striker in those situations. So, he didn't make the most of it, and he's getting paid a lot of money, which is great for him in one respect, but it makes him like untouchable for another respects, because now it's going to be really tough to move him to like, a club that, where he probably belongs to get his career back on track, because those kind of clubs can't afford him. It's now you got clubs that are trying to strong arm him out of like, threatening him with reserve team action unless like he takes like a buyout, and like that's not good. He shouldn't do that. He signed this contract, but like it's just a really ugly situation for Bobby, and it's not one where he can possibly even be in a good mindset right now. I don't know what's next for him, because the complications of his contract, it really makes things tough. I mean, I think they're going to have to move him while also eating some of his contract, but then it's a question of how much and then who's still willing to take him on.
So I'm going to put you in a difficult position, given that you just said it's really difficult to figure out where he's going to go next. Removing the contract from the equation, is there one place that you think could do him good? Like, would you like to see him? He's been linked with a move to Major League Soccer. Do you think that would help with his sort of confidence and getting him back into the rhythm? Do you want to see him go to a league like the Eredivisie where it tends to emphasize attack and maybe he gets better service, maybe he gets some goals? Is there a destination that you think would be better for him than where he is right now, which is probably the worst place he could be in?
Oh, I mean, Eredivisie is not going to work out because he doesn't have the EU passport, and that he's not going to. No one's going to pay him the minimum salary in that league.
Right. Forgot about that.
Yeah. I mean, in Major League Soccer, I could see it all depends on the team. I mean, if he goes to Colorado, he might just disappear. But obviously, if he's playing for a really good if he's playing for the Red Bulls, and when Bradley Ray Phillips is out, that might work. It's like any other league. It depends on. It's a very club specific. I mean, I think he's had a lot of success in the two Bundesliga. That seemed to do really well for his confidence in the past. But Union Berlin is now up in the Bundesliga. So it's interesting to see what if that's team specific or if that's the league specific and what teams there are out there. Anything's on the table, really. Whatever works. I mean, he's not a young player anymore. It's not about development. It's really about confidence and the one thing about making the move to Major League Soccer would be it's like Seattle was interested because Will Bruin's now out for a long period of time. He would be getting balls from Nicolas Ladero and some really good players, and so maybe he could learn what it's like to put a team on his back again and carry them towards a title. Not much. That's great confidence.
Yeah.
So it's impossible to say right now who's willing to also spend a lot on him.
So you say it's impossible to say, but I'm just going to go ahead and say that Brian Sciaretta confirms that Bobby Wood will go to Seattle Sounders. So that's good to know. I'm glad we settled that.
There you go.
Yeah, perfect. I want to go back to the U.S. Men's national team for a moment, though. They've got Trinidad this weekend. Maybe an opportunity to excise some demons, get over the kind of loss in Cuba, although I doubt it really makes up for that loss.
It's a really great storyline. I mean, I can sense that.
Yeah.
Everyone's been hitting this one hard.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and hit it hard ourselves. What would you like to see from this game? Would you like to see just a big scoreline, or are you looking more to see the United States continue to kind of implement what Greg Berhalter is asking of them? Do you want to see a couple players perform well that maybe haven't so far? All of the above. I leave it to you, Brian.
I want to see anger. I want to see passion and anger. Look. Guyana was the first time the U.S. team played a non-friendly in 20 months.
Yep.
They should be angry about that. Now they get a chance to play, maybe not against a lot of the same players, but they should have a team that they should want to go and rip their heads off. Just for lack of a better word, it's they should want to go out there and just pummel them. And you want and particularly if a guy like Josie or Michael is on the field, which is their legacy, you want to see them just go out there and just when a team is angry and just wants it more than the other team. There's absolutely no way in this earth that Trinidad should want this game more than the United States. Everyone should be salivating over just forget the style and tactics or whatever. You get the ball and you have a defender in front of you, just beat them, make them look bad, and then just keep scoring. It shouldn't even be about tactics at this point. I mean, that's the talent is so mismatched right now. It's just just go out there and just use your talent and just win everything individually if you have to. Just do whatever it takes just to make Trinidad look bad. That's what you want to see. You want to see another team you just want to see the U.S. get angry about something right now. And that would, what more than that?
That's really interesting because I think Daryl and I get sort of obviously into the weeds when it comes to should this ball have been played a second faster?
You can get into the weeds, sure, but at some point when you start worrying about tactical placement, in some of these CONCACAF games where none of that stuff should matter, it's all about just it's all about just that might matter in a real meaningful game where you're evenly matched and you have to do some things here and there just to use the best of your talent against a savvy opponent. it shouldn't even come down to that. I mean, if the U.S. just wants it more, then they'll win. It's a matter of just, not coming out timid or scared, but just knowing you're better and doing it. I mean, it's everything else just, it's kind of like getting lost in the sauce.
I like that. I do like that a lot, though, because I like the idea of, instead of maybe drilling too deep into certain nuances, first focusing on did the United States fight for every ball? Did they knock Trinidad off the ball? Did they embarrass them on a couple of occasions? Yeah, I'm down to keep track of that. I think that's a pretty solid way to do it.
Do they need to invert the wingers? Do they need to does Paul Ariola need to move to the right and Boyd to the left, or vice versa? Fine, but it really shouldn't matter.
So then, what would you say going forward are your sort of expectations for this team in terms of, do you expect them to make it to the final? If they don't, is it a failure? If they don't win, is it a failure?
Well, look, I think it's, we all knew the 2015 Gold Cup was still the worst Gold Cup imaginable. I mean, they lost at home to Jamaica and then Panama in the third place. Was it Panama? Yeah, in the third place game. Mm-hmm. Because and they never even played Mexico. They were getting outshot against Haiti and Honduras, and I mean, you knew that and they only beat Cuba because half the Cuban team defected into the night the day before. So you knew that was a bad tournament, and look, losses happen. Ball bounces in a crazy way, it can affect the game. But yeah, I don't think CONCACAF is as strong as it was for maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago. The U.S. should at least get to face Mexico in the final or somewhere along the way, and then Mexico's the favorite right now. I think we all have to acknowledge that, and then and then it's just a matter of putting up a good fight and putting themselves in a position to win. And if it doesn't go their way, there's still ways you can say okay, they're trending in the right direction, but then there's ways where they could just get absolutely smoked and then barely squeak by a couple of teams and, en route to getting smoked by Mexico, and then realize that wasn't good at all. So it really comes down to how they're playing. There's a big thing of the eye test and generating chances and not letting teams control the ball and in the middle of the field, which is what we saw Jamaica do in the pre-Gold Cup friendly. So it's a matter of them also playing with passion and just wanting it, and not looking confused out there. So, there's a big part of the eye test to determine whether or not they're going in the right direction more than the results. But yeah, you want to see them at least get to a point where they're winning games they should, and then giving it, looking like they're hanging tough in games where maybe the other team is better, has more talent. So we'll see how it goes. But it's a weird tournament, but the U.S. should at least be the second best team in this federation.
And then moving past the Gold Cup, we've got Nations League coming up near later on in the year. We've got friendlies coming up. We had a question that Daryl and I think answered on this show, strangely enough, because we'll insert a little me and Daryl talking into this one, or maybe people have already heard that at that point. This probably doesn't make much sense for you, Brian, so I apologize. But the question was what player who has not yet been capped do we most want to see, or who do we think will be kind of incorporated into the senior team the soonest? So not to put you on the spot, because I know you probably don't know the number of caps off the top of your head, but looking at, say, maybe the U20s who just finished the World Cup, maybe some of the U23s in that Olympic side, who are some players there who you think are at the point in their careers where you think they could handle playing for the senior national team?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I probably do know more about number of caps than I probably care to admit with certain plays. It's the answers I give are kind of a little, unfortunate, because I think that the federation is going to put a big emphasis on Olympic qualifying. So keeping that U23 team together and preparing for when qualifying is next year. We don't know the dates. I've heard someone mention March next year. But whenever, so for example, I think Paxton Pomykal would be a good guy to bring in because he plays defensively well in the midfield. He can win turnovers and he's pretty good passing, and he does a lot of things I think could, be attractive to a manager. especially, having to play guys like, Pulisic and Tyler Boyd, getting the ball to those kind of players, he could do really, really well. But I think he's probably best playing with the U23 team right now. Same thing with a guy like Jackson Ewell and stuff like that. And so, unfortunately, that always kind of makes it a little tough to answer. But absent any other youth games, I think Pomykal is the guy who's uncapped, who probably looks like he could play really well at that level. And I'm happy though that Dwayne Holmes is in the equation, because he would have been the top if he wasn't involved with the team by this point.
And if the U.S. were to maybe make one last go through a senior team call up to, say, Efrain Alvarez, what do you think happens there? Do you think that ship has sailed, or do you think there's still a chance that maybe his head could be turned?
No, I think his head can be turned. Sure. I don't like the idea of enticing him. I know it's been floated around by some people, offering him like a senior team call up just to get him to switch. I mean, it's like, even if the U.S. national team is not at a great place right now, it shouldn't be dangling those kind of opportunities to 16-year-old kids who don't start for the LA Galaxy and they're U17 eligible. I mean, if they want to play for the U.S., they'll play for the U.S. It's not like they're not in the mix or they don't know about him. And Greg Berhalter's even talked about him. But at this point, he even lives here and he's played for the U.S. And if he wants to play on the U.S. team, he will. But if he doesn't, I don't think you're ever going to get the best out of a player when his heart's not in it. Just because you enticed him with something extraordinary that you would never offer him otherwise. If he wasn't a dual national, then you're dealing with a guy who's probably in it for the wrong reasons, and you'll never see the best of him when he does do that. We've seen players like that who, they have really good club careers, and then they come into the U.S. national team and they don't necessarily look that great. And sometimes you wonder, well, if their heart's in it. I mean, you speculate. They'll always say the right things in interviews, but so I don't think I think he's out for the 17 cycle, but I think that's a question more for Tad Ramos if he's still with the U.S. U20 team for next cycle.
So you're saying my plan to trick him into playing for the national team is maybe not the best idea?
Well, I think the idea is to make the U.S. national team an attractive option to play for. That's
what a novel idea.
Yeah, I mean, let's just go. If you go out there and start beating teams, then everyone wants to play for you. It's not be really, really bad, and then try to say, here, join our program. We'll put you on some kind of path. Then all you've just done is just annoy everybody else who's worked really, really hard to get to that point. I just think that could backfire big time.
All right, that's probably fair. All right, then I did want to ask you about some other players who maybe could do the move or might be on the move this summer. Sure. We've already talked about Bobby Wood and Tyler Boyd. Let's talk Timothy Weah for a second. Was strongly linked with a move to Lille, I think for $10 million, $11 million, something like that. What's the latest you've heard there? Is that sort of still potentially in the works?
I think it's potentially in the works. I think they're haggling about money. I mean, they're already starting to leak stories to the French media, PSG's unhappy with Lille's offer, and look, $10 million for Tim Weah is that's a serious offer for based on his play, because he didn't really tear up PSG's reserves a couple of years ago, and I mean he hasn't really torn. He had a good World Cup, not U20 World Cup, not a great U20 World Cup. So, I mean, I think he's definitely going to be on the move. I think after, the U20 World Cup, they kind of know what kind of offers they're going to get. So it's probably at a high point due to his young age in terms of what they can get for him. So I think he'll end up there. With the smoke, there's fire. I mean, everyone's kind of reporting that they're talking. It's just, I think it's just kind of haggling, and we'll see. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if it fell apart, but I think you got to see Lille is the favorite.
All right, and then what about for Chris Gloucester? Lots of news about maybe him staying, about maybe him going. What are your expectations for him this summer?
Yeah, I think he's in a good position right now. He's young. He's a left back. that's a great position to be in. His lack of an EU passport obviously rules out like some really good options, some countries. So it's a smaller pool. I think he probably has to stay within Germany. So now it's going to be who's looking for a left back who's, very good defensively in 1v1 situations and picks his right times to move forward. I think he'll land in Germany somewhere. And it's just a question of, if he stays there, if he could stay at HFE or Hanover and do well. But that club's is not in a great situation. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I think he'll stay within Germany. That's the best I could tell you.
All right. Emmanuel Sabi, it sounds like, also one likely to be on the move. That one, maybe a few more like concrete links we've heard so far.
Yeah, I've heard Brøndby and Anderlecht, which sounds about right. Anderlecht is a hot mess right now. It's the first time I can remember them missing out on Europe. Brøndby obviously would know him very well. I mean, look, he had a great start to the season. He had a big stretch of the season where he wasn't that great, and then he ended it very, very well. I mean, but he's got some real physical gifts that I think are always going to attract teams that believe that they can coach well and get the most out of players. So, I think, he's going to look for clubs that really like to play young players and sell them on and coach a lot and coach up to value. So, I think staying in Denmark would probably seems like it would make the most sense, but, especially towards one of the higher up teams, I think that that's probably the more believable route, but it wouldn't surprise me if he found his way into either Germany or Belgium.
All right, and final question for you. Is there one player that you would, one American player that is, you would most like to see get a move this summer? Because there are, I think, several that I can think of who could maybe use a permanent move or at least a bit more playing time. Players like Emerson Hyndman, maybe Luca De La Torre, even Matt Miazga. It's hard to see him getting a lot of minutes at Chelsea this season. Then again, it's hard to know what is going to happen at all at Chelsea this season. So I turn it to you. Who would you, or who are a couple players, if you want to go that route, who you would like to see on the move?
Well, Miazga is going to take care of himself. Some of those players, Miazga's had a little hiccup in France. It really wasn't that long. He's done well most of his whole career. He's always going to land on his feet. But a player I want to see make a good move the most, which I still believe in his talent, it's just I don't think is Eric Palmer-Brown. I think people forget just how good he is, and he's going on route. He's going to go on. He's obviously signed to Man City, and it wouldn't be he's out. So he's going to be going on loan because he doesn't have the EU passport. He can't get into England, but I really think he's a very, very good player. Unfortunately, with these loan routes, sign with a big club, then go out on repeated loans. We've seen this a lot with a bunch of American players. It becomes really a test of agents and judgment and getting these good loans where you can. And Knock Breda was in a terrible situation, although Eric really started to play well towards the end of the season, despite being on a sinking ship. But I would love to see him on a team that could really compete for something. Either in Belgium or in Holland, because I think he'll remain in one of those two countries. He's been on loan to the teams in each country. And, I would love to see him in a situation where he could thrive, because I think he's got such a massive upside. And, with him not really playing with the U23s or him not even being on the 40-man preliminary roster, I think he's kind of slipped the mind of a lot of American fans. Mm-hmm. But, I really do think he's a gem. And it's just a matter of being in a situation where you can polish that off.
I will own the fact that he has completely slipped off my radar. So your point is well taken, as are most of your points, Brian Sciaretta. Thank you, as always, for joining us. What have you got coming up? What is your kind of coverage going to look like over the next couple months? Where are you kind of focusing in terms of Americans abroad or national teams and youth national teams and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be doing a lot of that. I mean, I think, I'll be on the Gold Cup beat. I just got back from Italy. I was abroad for a while seeing family. And now it's, I'm looking forward to really getting into the U23 team and, the European preseason and following these moves and then seeing also the youth movement in Major League Soccer, which has been very promising this year. Seeing these kind of players, get minutes. That's been, I think there's up to 12 that have already played in the league that are eligible for the next U20 team, which is a phenomenal rate by any standard, across the world. So it's a matter of getting players minutes, because I think when they do that, it's a numbers game in terms of getting these players to turn out. So domestically, across the board, across the globe in Europe, it's interesting to see this next generation try to break through, because we followed that missing years generation where it didn't happen. So it's interesting to see the approach towards trying to groom a better generation, and that starts at home and then continues abroad with the cream of the crop, and it's all very, very important.
Indeed, and I expect that you will keep your eye on it, keep us all updated about those developments. How can people follow you? How can people find you?
Oh, I'm all over the place on American Soccer Now. I'm writing a lot for Soccer America these days too, and I know they did an interview about your show recently.
Mm-hmm. They certainly did.
Everyone should check out Soccer America for that. And then I'm on Twitter at Brian Sciaretta. You can always talk to me about anything, really. Soccer or non-soccer.
There we go. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate your openness, and I appreciate the plug for the article. We very much appreciated Soccer America taking the time to talk to Daryl. Daryl is usually better about responding to those types of requests, and then it tells me afterwards, oh, hey, by the way, that interview is coming up. So well done to him, well done to Soccer America, and well done to you, Brian. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Anytime. Just let me know.